Jason, what are your initial thoughts on the potential? I know you've got a sign based on some documentation, as we were just told, but...
Well, what I can say offhand, this initiative actually ties in well to the mission statement of the bank, which is ideally to be the financial institution of choice for all stakeholders. Now, by being that, we are always striving to ensure that each stakeholder, and in this regards, that would be the LCDS sector, that's associated with that. Now, we have partnered, for instance, with IFC, not just Republic Bank Guyana, the whole Republic Bank group, which we have developed a website, SME Toolkit Caribbean, which is free to any local SME. They can log on, they can sign on free of charge. And there's a lot of information that is available there, ranging from human resource management, finance. They can go find information about how to do their accounts, even things to do with time management, different aspects within your business, whether it be pricing and so forth. Now, in terms of the Small Business Bureau with this grant, how that fits into that is the IFC themselves. They recognize that the small businesses, they have particular weaknesses. One of that being access to finance. Now, many small businesses do not have the collateral to start up their business. But what the SBB is doing now, they're giving this grant, so they're 40% closer to having that ability, which is actually an advantage for them. So it's more than likely that the bank would be willing to bend and say, hey, you're getting 40%, let's take the risk, rather than, the bank take a full 100% risk. And that ties in well to our initiative and where we aim to go, because we have a load of other programs that run in that direction in educating and helping the SMEs to come into Republic Bank and be able to access financing.
All right. So, now in terms of the grant, how is that structured? You do the evaluation, do they get the money in advance, or are they required, like for example, Caribbean Export had this grant program where you have to spend up front. And what they would do over a fixed period is based on the invoices that you submit and the other related conditions, you will submit that and get a reimbursement after that. How is your grant program structured?
Well, first I want to remind that the grant is just a small aspect of the program.
Yes.
It's just $500,000. And you come in and you do a business plan to really to convince the evaluating committee that you really know what you want to do. I remember I was very excited last year when the young people, and I think it was the west coast of Demerara, made a solar drying for shrimp. Things like that we can see ourselves get excited about. And it will be evaluated. We've written to 2 institutions who have experience in evaluating credit ability and that sort of thing, because we even realize within the Small Business Bureau we don't have the capacity. We've asked them to give us a quote. We will take them on, hopefully contract them to assist in assessing, not to the means to daunting the initiative, but assess where the strengths can be strengthened and where the weaknesses can be overcome, as well as provide training. So the person will come in with a project plan and really to say that you know what you want to do. It will be a big fancy plan, and we'll take it from there and ask the institution to look at it. And then there's a committee of, as I said, of the representing different organizations that will sort of like sign off and say you get a grant. You don't have to put any money up front. There's a grant. But I said the grant itself, even though good, and I'm glad the 2 financial experts aside me did say that it has some merit. We want to see more for this project. The thinking to go more value added, to go from beyond primary production to process things, to do more manufacturing, to even the services to be more innovative and so on. And that is why I prefer to focus on the fact that the risk is minimized. I think Mr. Tracy made the case very well on behalf of the financial institutions at the launch, that the no risk is depositors' money and so on, but the risk is minimized by us putting 40% of the cash required. You just get 6%. It doesn't have to be cash, and then you're free to get to get the loan. Because when the grant money is done, it's done. It's just a small portion.
Right.
But as both knowledgeable gentlemen said just now, it is helpful. And it's not only Guyana that finances small business fail. There's a rate of failure.
Like every business.
Those that go on to grow. And people who fail also can come back again and try.
All right, let's talk about the mechanism for a bit, because if, for example, as a business person, I would like to benefit from this, so I would come to you first. In terms of how is it structured?
We like you to come to the Small Business Bureau because we want to capture you in our database, one. Right. And two, we want to ensure that it's within the areas, which is like almost every area. I read it out just now, except extractive mining. But I understand you have something that's known as sustainable mining now. Extractive forestry, but you could do value added for furniture. And poultry, but you could do chicken, but not livestock, not poultry, I mean livestock. Because the agriculture has its own program already. You don't want to duplicate that. So it's about almost anything that you could dream. According to the Act, a small business is termed a small business if it fulfills two of the following three criteria. Not more than 60% annual turnover, 60 million annual turnover, Ghana dollars. Not more than 20 million Ghana dollars in assets, and not more than 25 employees. If you fit within any two, you consider a small business. And we would like to know that you're within that too, because it's consistent with that. We like to know that you're registered with the deeds registry as a business, because legitimate business. And we like to know that you are within the tax net. And for that, we are helping, because we have an understanding worked out with the GRA that the GRA will look towards helping the businesses to be compliant by saying, look, you tell us what you've earned over the last 3 years, we'll accept it. And that's an understanding we have worked out with the GRA. So, I mean, that's beautiful. And we're trying to get something like that now. I've been into the NIS. So once you come, you don't just come to us because you want information about you, but we want to help you to get yourself in order. You can go to the bank too, but the bank will refer us. So at some time, refer you to us to say that this person really wants to benefit from this facility, because we've got to put up the 40%. So either way, for example, if people live at Linden, rather coming down to Georgetown for the Small Business Bureau, they can go into the bank. They're the branch of the bank that are RIPED. I keep saying bank, I should say RIPED there, and they can start the process. We're very flexible on where you start, but at some time, the two institutions will have to relate to each other about the client.
Because I'm just trying to get to the bottom of the there is a level of diligence that's done anyway. So if you go to iPad directly, if we come to Republic Bank directly, there is a process that you go through in terms of making sure that the potential borrower is qualified to access the funds that they're asking for. Correct. So if I come, so for example, if I come to you first, that's a matter of process. So you make sure that I meet the qualifications in terms of a small business. You make sure I'm compliant. You make sure that I'm compliant, PAY, and you also make sure that I'm trying to get support in the sector that also meets the conditions that you've established as part of the program. Yeah. So your work is finished there, I imagine.
It's finished there until the bank, the financial institution, the financial institution contacts us for whatever purpose they want to contact us. It's a process with forms and documents and so on. I'm not really the technical person.
Okay.
But it's a process. That's set out as operations manual. I mean, everything is built in, because remember this IDB monitor there, and there's a strict monitoring mechanism in it.
All right. You were about to say.
No, I just like to add to what Derek is saying here is that from iPad perspective, we process your loan as per normal.
Yeah.
Right.
the requirement to get a loan under this facility would be that you have to be registered with the Small Business Bureau.
I see.
To be registered with the Small Business Bureau means you have to fulfill
The conditions.
criteria that he just listed there. Now, it's also important to understand that we will follow our due process of giving the loan. The 40% is not given to you. The 40% is just guaranteed.
Guaranteed,
Which
right.
means they're providing collateral for you and not the cash. The important element there is that if you borrow $30 million, you have to pay back $30 million. But if you only have collateral to cover $18 million, the facility covers the additional
Of course.
$12 million. All right? So you go through pretty much the same process as you would have gone through to get your loan from a facility. It's just that you're getting this support now by increasing your collateral so you can borrow more. Okay? When Derek spoke of a business plan, we don't want people to be scared that it's a sophisticated document that you require to hire consultants to get done. So, not that we have problems with consultants doing plans, but it's going to be very simple and very straightforward. Again, proving your business exists, prove your idea, prove your value proposition or why you have a business, and prove that your business can be grown and be sustainable.
When I look at when I heard some of the categories that you mentioned, and some of those, and I want to talk about things like business process outsourcing and information technology, because the difference with those two businesses is that it doesn't carry the amount of equipment that some of the others do. So farming has, for example, farming may have a tractor, may have a harvester, it may have all those sorts of things, and the IT does not. And it's just that we have found sometimes that some of my colleagues have said that when they go sometimes to get assistance for those types of businesses, they run into difficulties sometimes because they just, by virtue of the way the business operates and by virtue of the fact it doesn't require these physical things that it requires. And that's why your comments about mixed collateral also caught my attention, because I was wondering how that was going to fit. Because, it's here, and that's one of the things that you're focusing on, obviously. So the question would be, how do you think we get to deal with that, especially for things like IT and BPO, which are critical to this country's long-term growth, especially if you want to conduct 21st century business. So how do we deal with that? Because some of those have different requirements in terms of how you do that.
Well, I think that's where the guarantee comes in. You're rightfully that you might not have everything that you require, but surely to do business process outsourcing, you have some level of equipment. And to do it at a reasonable scale, it means it requires some level of investment in your part. What we will look at is the investment that you would have also made in the business.
In the first instance.
All right? So it's not that we're starting you from scratch in that instance. All right? For me, in this particular facility, once you can prove that you have been in existence for some while and that you've proven that you have invested some money behind it, we will contribute our part, take the collateral guarantee, and we build you out.
Okay, fair enough.
But it's a conversation you must start
But you must start with that. Good thing. All right.
I want to.
Sorry.
Just to add something, I just remember when we were talking about the importance of being giving your information to the Small Business Bureau as well, apart from the project, is that under the Act, government is required to procure at least 20% of all procurement, the total procurement per year from small businesses, from goods and services. When you talk about the budget of 49+ billion, you're talking about a lot of money there. We are now working towards getting that, get a baseline on that. We've been in discussion with the procurement and commission, Tender Board Commission, Mr. DeClue, and the Ministry of Finance is very amenable to us trying to see how we could structure this and form this up.
So it's like a minority set-aside program.
Within the Act,
right.
the Act states that government should, small businesses are entitled to provide up to at least 20% of the goods and services required by government. So it's important as well too that we capture the information of all the small businesses, and we monitor at the level of the government, the ministries and the regions. We're now trying to get a baseline that and see how best we can assess and evaluate that. It means also that we can talk to business and say, listen, there's X service to be performed within X ministry or agency. You want to set up a business, you want to expand into this and so on. It's something that won't happen overnight, but I just want to point this out to say there is provision in the Act for that, and we're working towards that too.
Okay, fair enough.
You know, the point that Derek is making there about the Act including 20%, what is basically saying that whatever government is buying, the Act is saying that the government can buy 20% of it from small businesses, which is a good policy and a good initiative. Without looking at it from the angle of access to finance, as the government is the buyer, buyers need to have reliable suppliers.
Exactly.
Now, registering them with the Small Business Bureau is one step towards saying that they are reliable, because they would have passed an initial test of some level of structure, somebody else knows them, and so forth. So that's why it's important to register with the Small Business Bureau.
All right. There are some standard or old, you talk to small businesses and you talk to micro enterprises and so on and so forth, and you continue to hear. And this depends on who you talk to and the perspective, but they sometimes talk about the process, and they talk about it being fairly or unfairly, a little too lengthy, a little too onerous. My response sometimes, which is considered caustic at the chamber level, is that you don't mind filling out 15 pages of a US visa, and yet anything else takes.
I'm not sure you're going to get a visa.
I'm not sure you're going to get a visa. But
Once you pay close to 40,000.
Exactly, to get it in the first instance. Is there a whole lot of validity to this sometimes constant murmur or complaint that there's too many forms, too many things? I mean, we understand that the banks and the Small Business Bureau as well, requires a certain amount of the information to do their work. Are we satisfied as institutions that the information that we're asking for is concise and suits the purpose? As a response to some of these complaints all the time, which are getting smaller and smaller, I believe, but still seem to appear on occasion in terms of when they come to access support from the various entities.
Well, Lance, if I may, and I had a discussion with Gillian from SBB a little while back because I was finding out, coming to the same point. Fine, we're given, like for instance, the 40% guarantee SBB is going to be given. But when I called, I was finding out, exactly under what conditions will the 40%. This was in the initial stages of leading up to the finalization of the contracts and so. And they have recognized, like for instance, with Republic Bank, that some amount of training is needed. Now, I would say that in the eyes of the clients, the customers, the SMEs, that the process can at times seem to be onerous. Yes, it can be tedious, lengthy. They view it as this, the bank being this big bad enterprise that all you want is one set of documents. You bring in this, or else you won't get any loan or so. But the reality of it is that most of these things that we ask for, in best business practices, you're supposed to have them within your business in order for your business to function properly.
In the first instance.
Right.
Okay.
Or else you're going to end up in problems, which many of them do eventually. And that is why we are always, promoting education. Up to 2 weeks ago, we finished one such program, which is part of our yearly plan, targeting SMEs, which was the Commercial Customer Business Program, where we had 17 of our clients that we chose, and they went through leadership skill, HR, finance, and marketing. Right now, what that was, the commercial customer business program, we flew in a bunch of experts from Artelogchak, and I wouldn't say taught them, we just sensitized them because they've admitted that some of this information that we have shared with them, they already know, but they haven't been fully putting them into practice. Now, for instance, with the anti-money laundering, act that's going to be out, what I have to say, one of that, for instance, is that you're required to provide your financing when you come, for instance, to the bank, right? When you open an account. Now, you have to get it anyhow. Even nowadays, when you go to any institution, almost everywhere you have to get up some of these documents that your business is supposed to have at any point in time. Right? So anything that we ask, the customer is basically supposed to have at their fingertips. The only thing out of the way may be a valuation of your property, for instance, if you need to lodge that as collateral. Right. Everything from your statement of income, a simple listing of your assets. These are things that are supposed to be within the business. So, for them to say that it is onerous, maybe a little bit, I would want to say far-fetched, but as I said, in the eyes of the customer, that's how they view it because of the fact, the information is not out there, and that's what we intend to do as Republic Bank. Help spread the information to sensitize them that, okay, as a bank, this is what we expect. And part of our program includes going out in the community, finding out from them what their shortcomings are, right? Similarly, what we would expect or what, is expected of us to give back to the customer. So that we could close that gap.
Ramesh,
in order to provide service from a financial institution perspective to a business, it's building a relationship.
Right.
We don't just meet somebody and get married to them right away. That can be disastrous, right? It's important that we know our client. The documentation that is required is helping us to know you. Remember, when you walk into our business, we have absolutely no idea who you are.
Exactly.
So we have to do due diligence. We have to figure out first who you are. We have to prove that your character is good. We have to know you make sure that you're not a terrorist. We have to make sure that you're not a criminal, because there are laws that will say that if we do business with terrorists, our business can be at risk. We want to make sure that you're not money laundering. We want to make sure that you're not involved in criminal activity. That's just one part. We also want documentation to prove that your business is going to survive and is going to exist and so forth. All right. At iPad, we see the documentation process as adding structure to you. You don't build a house without having your foundation in place. And many times businesses run into problem because they're informal and illegal. So somebody comes in and shuts you down because you don't have a license. You're operating a barbershop and you didn't get permission from the mayor and city council. They walk in any day and shut you down. That means you have a loan to pay, but then your license is not in order. You get shut down. What would be your source of income? So the documentation is to protect the client. All right, and we see it forward as a means of training. If you don't know what you have to do, we help you to guide, to go to get all the permits and all the documentation in place. And that in itself is a learning process. Filling up all the forms, we ask you questions of things that you might never even dream of thinking about. And that might be the first time you're hearing sometimes of these questions. That in itself is an education process. So for me, I don't see it's onerous. As an institution, unlike the bank, I can't access finance by deposits because my institution is a special type of institution.
Right.
Okay? So that means I have to negotiate financing facilities with other development institutions in the donor community and so forth. For me to access such facilities, it takes me a year and a half to negotiate a facility on average. It takes a client 2 weeks. To get a loan. So when you complain about process and so forth, you have to bear that in mind. And it's important. We have to know you. We have to build a relationship. We have to trust you. And that documentation and due diligence process is important.
All right. We've got about 5 minutes. Derek, at the end of the program, I know you've got your job targets and you've got your training targets. And so on. What, apart from that, do we see other, you do we see other types of impact? Are we at a point where certainly this is a boost in terms of moving those who want to start micro businesses and those who want to move from there to SMEs and move even further afield? That would be the goal in terms of expanding the business presence in the private sector as a whole. What is the vision in terms of this project, and also the SBB in general, as far as the support that you're giving?
Well, I think you've summed it up partly there. Absolutely, you are correct that we want to grow the sector. We want to grow on entrepreneurship. All the countries, the small business sector is a very big contributor to the economy. I don't know if Ramesh will remember to tell you, but next month is a big recognition for entrepreneurship. So we think it's the Bureau itself also is moving towards setting up a resource center as a prerequisite to an incubator, a business incubator, to give support to businesses. And I already wrote out the numbers: 2,200 jobs sustained or created, over 1,000 persons trained. But more than that, we are emphasizing clustering, networking, clustering to be part of the supply chain of bigger businesses, both locally and overseas. And we will give the kind of infrastructural support, the kind of resource support to do that. So you will see an entrepreneurial, a rise in the entrepreneurial contribution, an improvement in the contribution of the small business sector to the economy. People will move from, hopefully, from micro to small, to small, to medium, to large. People will be linked to larger businesses. People will develop the capacity to do things, their skills in the areas. I can see people diversifying in other activities as the economy itself grows and modernizes and takes off. This project is very timely too, because I'm holding here the report of the Global Economic Conditions Survey for the third quarter from two prestigious organizations, the IMA and the ACCA, which speak to a credit crunch.
Right.
Because they're saying that even as the economies are beginning to pick up overseas, lots of businesses are given to smaller businesses but don't have the credit. Right. Jamaica is suffering from that, followed by Barbados and St. Lucia and even the USA. So we here in Guyana are fortunate that we have the credit available, and I think we should take up the opportunity, advantage of this. The Bureau itself will be reaching out, will be providing the kind of linkages. We work with Go Invest. We don't work in isolation. Right. We work with the Ministry of Agriculture, because we're really a national organization. Exactly. We work with sister organizations in Brazil, SEBRAE, and other small businesses, institutions to have arrangements in some sort of structured way. The Manufacturing Association and different Caribbeans. We started this during the Expo through the GMSA. And the business forum and so on, and your own chamber too, right? Exactly. Which has a small business sector now too. Yes. So we constantly looking at these arrangements, and we want to put link to these different agencies and organizations for long-term sustained benefits.
All right. Regrettably, as with most of these shows, we have to wrap this up. This is the most informative. I'm happy to hear that two other institutions are now going to join GBTI. Hopefully, more others come on board for this project. Let me thank you, gentlemen, for spending the time this evening with us to give us this information. This kind of conversation will continue, and again next week is Entrepreneurship Week. IPED, I believe, will be coordinating a series of events. Stay tuned to their programs and their information to find out what it is. So on behalf of the Chamber, on behalf of the guest, let me bid everyone good evening, and thank you for watching.